and welcome to the Keys to Therapy. Today's guest is Thomas. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
It's a great Friday, so I'm excited.
It's always good on a Friday.
Always, always.
Yay. Well, before we get started with all the stuff going on in this episode today, if you just want to tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
My name is Thomas Sutherland. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am currently a social worker by trade. I actually met Samantha in grad school, but we bonded over our love of the Bad Girls Club.
Yes.
And Bad Girls. If you need something to watch, it's kind of trashy, but good. I am a currently, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I currently live in Chicago, Illinois. I went to school in UNC at Charlotte and graduated, moved to Chicago, started my career there because of the whole license thing. And I've been doing community mental health since being in Chicago. Work for an agency called Trilogy Behavioral Healthcare. And I'm currently a clinical director managing outreach programs. It sounds like a lot. And I was actually joking with a friend because everyone, when they hear about what we do, they're like, oh my God, you're doing the Lord's work. So we're just like, what are the things that people say? The Lord's work, bless your heart. Ooh, you're so impactful. You're doing great things. But for me, it's like, we are helping people with kind of their illness and helping them, keeping them independent in the community. Um, Introductions. For fun, I play rugby and then I was in a singing group. If your audience wants to know a little more about me. But I think that's really the high points, really.
Yeah. Oh, rugby. I know. I remember going to your game in Charlotte.
I know. It was so much fun and it was so hot.
Yes, extremely hot. That part has not changed. It's probably gotten worse. So maybe it's better you moved up north.
It's still hot. And now we get snow. So we get snow in games.
Yeah, I couldn't do the snow. Not that heavy, but good for you for being able to handle it. Well, I want to talk to you about community mental health because I know that for a lot of people in grad school, that seems like the natural path that you go to, right? It's a lot of people either start there or end up there in some way. I mean, I know I worked community mental health for 2 years when I was getting my license.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I know with that, there's some stigma that comes with community mental health, right? There's some things that people maybe say like, oh, it's so difficult, it's so hard. And then there's other people who are like, but it's so rewarding and you get so much experience. So we feel like there's a lot of ups and downs with community mental health.
Mhm.
And since you've had so much experience from, I'd say like the bottom to the top, if you're a clinical director now, fancy.
Yeah, I'm the top.
Yeah. So I want to hear about like that journey. But also, I guess for the people who maybe don't understand a lot about community health, explaining some of what that means. And then also possibly then we'll break it down more into some of the lows and some of the highs.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk a little about the journey because, like most people, I didn't know what community mental health was. I just assumed it was social workers going into homes. And I think
Mhm.
our first kind of interaction is like DCFS. We're going into homes and taking kids away,
Yeah.
and it's gotten this like negative. So for me, it was like, okay, I graduated. I knew that I wanted to get my license. I knew that it was a 2 year long commitment, and unfortunately, we live in a country where the license process is not kind of nationwide, it's state by
Mhm.
state. So I was like, okay, I got to make a decision. I'm staying in North Carolina or I'm going to move out of state. I decided to move and move to Chicago without a job, which was a little tough, and kind of worked part-time jobs and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that, but I found a casual job. And the last, like one of the days that I went, I think I worked on a Sunday. I met this one of the workers there. Her name was Samantha Handley. She was like, "Yeah, today's my last day. I'm actually a CFO of not CFO, a COO of this agency called Trilogy." And I'm like, "Oh, I need a job. Tell me more." And she was like, "Oh, we do like community mental health. We also have this program where we work with people in nursing homes and move them out." And I was like, "Well, those all sound great. I need a full-time job." And she was like, "Hey, come over and interview tomorrow." And I was like, "I did." And they ended up offering it to me. So I initially I interviewed for community mental health outreach work and an entry level job and like a nursing home like position. where we basically would go into nursing homes. Well, let me take a step back. The state of Illinois got sued by people in nursing homes, saying that there's no easy way to get out of a nursing home because all their money goes towards nursing homes and you can't get like a move-in fee to carry your deposit, getting all the furniture ready for an
Mhm.
apartment. So people felt stuck. So these nursing home individuals got together. They sued the state of Illinois and won. And they started this program called the Williams Consent Decree and the Colbert Consent Decree, like I think 5 or 6 years later,
Wow.
where they basically would work with community mental health agencies to kind of go in and kind of assess the client, see if they're able to live independently, if they know how to know about their diagnoses and can kind of manage in the community. And then once they got the approval, we would physically move them out. Like we would do all the shopping, and which was kind of
Wow.
fun. And was like, what type of couch do you want? Are
Yeah.
you a cook? Do you want to cook a lot? What type of bedroom set? So it was a lot of fun. And then we would move, like physically discharge them from the nursing home and put them in an apartment. And that's when the community teams would start working with them, which is what I'm currently
Mhm.
doing now. And so I started on that program, kind of did that for a little bit, became a supervisor. Then I got my L at that time, which was great. And then I moved up a little bit. I jumped around the agency. I did residential, and then I landed doing community outreach, and I've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years. And y- our community so community mental health. It is, I think it's all the things that you said. It is tough. It is very tough. We are going, I live in Chicago, Illinois. Our agency is covering all of Chicago.
Wow.
And contrary to what people might believe, when I leave my house, I'm not dodging bullets. On a regular,
That's
I
good to know.
wouldn't say that. That is good to know, right? I'm here, thank God.
Yeah.
I do have the luxury of living on the north side, and I will say the north side is of Chicago is has lots of resources, lots of availability, lots of public transportation. It's very accessible. However, when you get to the other parts of the city, especially the south side, it's a resource desert. There's not a lot of healthy food options. I feel like they've started putting Whole Foods on the south side, but it's not doesn't have the same level of resources as the north side, and the same
Mhm.
for the west side. So we are going in clients' homes throughout all of Chicago, and so that's something that I definitely asked early on when I'm interviewing, because it's also part of my job too, is like, how comfortable do you feel going into homes that maybe aren't the same cleanliness standards as yours, or even it might have bed bugs. I like to say the bed bugs term because that's a buzz term. Everyone hears bed bugs and they're like, I can't do this job. And it's like, well, this is an unfortunate hazard of the job. So there's all of that. And then
Yeah.
the rewarding part is that we are really, helping people stay independent. We're seeing them at their high highs and their low lows, while also working to, build those resources, build those supports so that they can stay in the community and be independent.
Yeah.
I think there's been lots of research that have shown like, it's cheaper to keep people out of nursing homes than in the community. Wait, yes, or cheaper than keeping them out in the community and going into nursing homes. And it's just like I think in nursing homes, not to knock it, I think nursing homes are great for certain people. I think that our nursing homes in Chicago have just become mainly for people that are homeless and have a mental illness.
Mm.
There was something during the consent decree stuff that they did research and saw that most nursing homes have 50% or more individuals where their primary diagnosis is a mental health diagnosis.
Wow.
And, you know, uh, again, not knocking nursing homes, there's a lot of people in those facilities, but it's just so many people that need so many needs that it's really hard sometimes to really kind of empower those people that can live independently in the community to like work
Yeah.
towards that.
Mm.
So I think that just seeing that and seeing clients do well, and even seeing them when they're not doing well, but they figure out how to kind of accomplish those goals is always kind of like, yes, look at that. They're amazing.
Yeah. It kind of means
Um,
more, I think, sometimes
of
when
course,
you see them, especially when you've known their journey more, that you're like, holy little baby, yes,
I
like you
know.
got this.
And it's like the simplest things. It's like, hey, like, I'm trying to think of something because it's really like when I talk to my staff about it, it's like
Yeah.
they are going through the same kind of issues that you and I are going through. You and I might be suffering from a mental health diagnosis. However, we don't have those skills to maybe or know what to do. So if it's like my toilet overflowed and I didn't know what to do, so I just left it overflowing. Well, that's maybe not a good idea. But if you know, like, hey, these are all the contacts on my fridge, I'm gonna call maintenance. And so when we hear like, hey, my toilet is overflowing, I think sometimes I go in go mode, like what needs to happen, who need to call.
Yeah.
But when clients are like, hey, my toilet is overflowing, I called them, I took care of it, they came by. I just want to know when you're gonna come and see me to give me my meds. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yay.
Look at that. So you're right. It's those little wins that I think help reminds us, I think those wins sometimes come few and far between, or we hear kind of not great news about our clients from landlords, but it's those individual things that kind of help keep you kind of going throughout the day and knowing like, it's not always going to be great, but there are some wins that we kind of highlight for our clients and our staff.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to end on a high note too. So if we could start with the lows in a little more detail, and then
Okay.
we'll work up to the highs. But I know for me, when I worked community mental health, part of the lows, I guess too, not just necessarily with clients, but more so on the therapist end, was I know for me, there was a lot of times that I felt a little bit powerless with the systems. You get to be a lot more involved, it sounds like, than I was able to be in the agency I was in, because
Mhm.
I couldn't go out and do things. I was kind of stuck in the office. But when
Mhm.
you're working sometimes with people with, whether it's like low SES or whatever's happening, there'd be times I'm like, gosh, it's really hard as a therapist, let alone a new therapist, when there's all these systems you're coming up against. So, I know for me personally, that was one of the lows, was struggling with, I want to help them so much more than what I'm able to do in this hour a week. So I was curious if that's been something that you or even some of the other people that work there have come up against.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I am very good about acknowledging with my staff and with the clients that I work with that we are working in broken systems. We
Yeah.
are doing our best with working out of, we are a fee for service agency. So we are relying on Medicaid, MCOs to kind of pay us for the services that we offer, as well as like looking at our paperwork and understanding that this individual does need these level of services where they're only seeing them, unfortunately, as a dollar sign. They're like, well, we think that you guys can step them down. So step them down and check back in 3 months. Where we're like, no, they need all of this. So I think that that is one major piece is that the systems that we work with are kind of sometimes working against us.
Yeah.
And then the definitions within these systems sometimes are so particular that it kind of will a lot of our clients aren't able to participate because they're too old, too young, they haven't been houseless for long enough. So I think even, and I get it that these programs, they have grants, they have things that they have to report to, that they're meeting certain populations, but in doing so they're limiting the access for our clients in some ways.
Yeah.
um, I think a lot of things, I was just talking with someone about this, the fact that we are still faxing. I'm having to fax things to people in 2023.
I know.
Why am I faxing when I can email it to you? It's going to go to a fax machine in an office on the 20th floor, and the janitor could pick it up and think it's trash and throw it away. And then that's going to delay the process. So it's like a lot of those systems are delaying when I have a client who is homeless and we have kept them in a hotel and we're just trying to get them housed. They've signed the lease, they've done this, but we're waiting on these outside agencies to kind of do all of this stuff. So I would say the systems that we work with is probably the major one thing. And I am very upfront with people. I tell them, hey, we're working a broken system. I'm not saying that to discourage you, but I'm saying that to so that you understand that when things are a delay or we're waiting on XYZ company to get back to us, that there's going to be some time and you're going to have to sit with that. And
Mhm.
that's not fair. That's not right. But that's unfortunately how we can get these services to you. So for me, I think I try to be very transparent so that there's
Good.
no love lost in terms of people are mad that like, why have you been having me waiting here? Because
Yeah.
it's a lot. Like even with our homeless, our houseless population, and they're trying to get into shelters, they have to
Mhm.
call 311, and then 311 will send someone out, but they have to stay at that location and they can't leave. Most of our clients don't have phones, so they're calling from our agency phone. And so then I'm like, the agency closes at 4:30, so you just might have to sit here. And then
Yeah.
the shelters, unfortunately, the clients are like, I'm not going to a shelter because the shelters are run like prisons. Again, not knocking the shelter system. They have a lot of people that they're servicing, but it's just what I've seen is that our clients have kind of lost faith in that system. So they would rather be on the street or homeless, which again will then make our jobs even harder because then we have to find people and out, throughout Chicago.
Yeah.
And so the systems, unfortunately, and it doesn't make it any better saying that. I don't get comfort out of saying that because at the end of the day, it's only hurting our clients. So that is kind of a major one. I think, yeah. So I think the other thing that I really see that's a negative is that it is that people that are coming to work for community mental health are, like you said, that are trying to get their license. They're fresh out of school. They
Yeah.
are very new to doing this work. And so while interviewing, I am very clear that I describe it as organized chaos because
Yeah.
they're working on community mental health teams with other staff.
Hmm.
They're having to rely on their teammates to be able to support them with clients. And anything can change within a day. I think I will say that is a low, but I would also maybe mention that's a high for some people. We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But I think that, when I was in school, when we were in school, I think we had a view of what community mental health was. I think that we didn't really talk much about
Oh.
community mental health. It was mainly about therapy modalities. You
Therapist.
want to do this. I want to work with kids. I want to work.
Yeah.
And we're working with adults with a mental illness that are suffering from substance abuse that might be high and or drunk in the middle of a meeting. And dealing with bed bugs and dealing with
Hmm.
people that have SI and HI and are aggressive. So I think it can be really hard for a new clinician to come into this field and be like, I want to do community mental health and I'm gonna have clients in my car and now you're telling me you have bed bugs and you're
Yeah.
in my car, or yeah, I can't get you, we're your payee and you don't have any more money. Now you're mad at me and you're cussing me out over the phone. Like, no one comes to work to get cussed out. However, that happens on a regular basis with this population. You know, and again, and I think a lot of times I don't 100% fault them because I tell clients, we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes,
Yeah.
but please just call and let us know and let's talk about it. We'll figure it out. We'll resolve it. So a lot of times I get pulled in because I'm the supervisor and someone wants to talk to the supervisor and then they get to me and
Hmm.
they're upset. And I'm like, well, I understand that. If it's our fault, let's resolve it, whatever the case may be. So I think just trying to nurture those new staff and understanding like this community mental health, and I think they're expecting a lot. I think we all come out of, graduate school or undergrad with, we're going to save the world. I'm going
Yeah.
to put my cape on and I'm going to do whatever needs to happen to get this client what they need. And then the
Hmm.
reality of it is that, oh no, you might have to leave this client homeless because maybe they've, for one reason or another, chosen that. And
Yeah.
you have to be comfortable with that and be okay with that. And that's hard. That's really hard for a new clinician,
Oh,
I think.
yeah. Because I think especially starting out your career, like you said, you're so idealized. Like you're like, I finally get to go and help the people, and there's this big, like wide-eyed, excited thing. And I think sometimes when people, it's really interesting to me too that the first jobs you get out of school tend to be the ones with like the highest security of issues. Why that's the case,
Why?
trial by fire. I don't know
Yeah.
what's happening, but that's kind of what happens. And so I think sometimes also clinicians can see some of these things and think like this is it. And so it's like, no, it's almost like boot camp, right? Like before you join the military, they're going to put you through the worst exercises and they're going to put you through the hardest things to hopefully then build up that tolerance and skills and come out in the end ready to go. And I
Absolutely.
think that's
Absolutely.
kind of what this is sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to jump ahead because I feel like you've read my paperwork, but I think that that is definitely a plus. I tell a lot of people
Hmm.
that if you can do this job, you can do anything within the field. Like,
So true.
I'm wearing different hats on a regular. I got to tell people, like, you might be the landlord, or not landlord, like a realtor, and showing a client an apartment,
Yeah.
and trying to convince them that, you know, while I know you want a fancy apartment downtown Chicago, you might have to settle, excuse me, for this apartment in this neighborhood that's not that great because you have been evicted 10 times. So let's be, I want you to, I want to be realistic about what your expectations are. You know, benefits person, you have to know a little bit about every type of benefit, you
Yep.
know, between link, utility support, housing, different housing subsidies, you know, different benefits for our clients that you can support them, because for one, lack of, you know, we have something called a free rides card in Chicago, that you can, if you have a disability, you can ride the bus and the train for free.
Wow.
But that is also like it is a very fancy card, because it's like you can ride public transportation and not pay 250. Like, you could technically sell that card. And I feel like some of our clients do make a little extra money. And so then we have to then be like, okay, let's get you another card. Like, let's get another card. Let's get this card. Let's do this. So knowing all of those systems, you have to be aware about. Then you're being a therapist, then you're maybe a client's in your car and then told you something as you're driving them home. And now you have
Mhm.
to turn on this like therapy hat and kind of triage these situations. So there's a lot of different, you know, skill building. Like, how do you cook a meal? I've definitely taught clients, like, the easiest thing you can possibly cook is spaghetti. It's
Yes.
boiling noodles and heating up sauce. If when in doubt, you run out of food, do that. Or when in doubt, when you're out of food, make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. I
Mhm.
ate one yesterday. People still eat it. Like, it's
Yes.
still good. So it's really like around like looking at the individual person, like looking at their recovery goals, and really being able to say, how can we best help them? Maybe I'm not the best to help around this and this and this, but luckily this person on the team and they can do this. So even knowing like, I'm not the best, let me find someone else. And I think knowing what you're good at and maybe what you need more support about, will get you. I feel like that's gotten me to where I'm at today, doing like that kind of out in the field, having to think on my feet, has really gotten me and made me hone those skills to where if staff will call me now and be like, I'm calling you now because I know that you will give me an answer and a plan.
Mhm.
And I'm like, thank you, I appreciate that, but this is a really hard situation.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think a lot of that is really building people up to go and be a therapist, or to maybe stay in this field and be a supervisor and supervise teams, or try something different. Maybe they've seen that, you know, I feel like there's a niche, there's something that we can do better with, and I want to do that somewhere else. And I
Mhm.
really understand it. I think that, you know, I understand that this job is a jump off point for people. I'm not expecting that most people are going to stay in this position forever. I
Yeah.
would actually discourage that, because I think that people can, you learn a lot, and you can learn like maybe one aspect of this job I really enjoy. Maybe I do enjoy the, you know, the skill building part. Let's find you a job position
Yep.
that really focuses on that. Maybe I like the housing piece. Said no one. But if you do like the housing piece,
Yeah.
I know people. Hey, we can help. We can do that right now.
Yeah.
So really hones in what you like about social work, because you're doing so many things, and that will help like hone you into what you need. Because I think that personally for me, what I've enjoyed, which is weird to say out loud, is kind of those crisis situations where I can like, give me the high points, I'll get you a response. Let's jump into gear. Let's do this, and let's get this person what they need.
Yeah, it's
So
definitely skill building like that. Like you build up those skills really quick as a therapist,
oh yeah,
especially a new
oh yeah,
therapist. And I
yeah.
think it gives you confidence in pretty much every other area of your career. So like kind of transitioning to some of the highs, I feel like that would be a big one is like you mentioned, there's not really going to be a place that you can work in the future that you're going to be like, I don't know if I could do this after you've done some of the things with community mental health or heard some of the stories even, because I know when I was working it, there's like a mental health side and then a substance abuse side, but I was doing partial hospitalization. So I had people from both sides in my group, and some of the stories were so
Yeah.
intense. And even some of the afters, like, I remember being pulled into my supervisor's office and saying, hey, this God, 19-year-old that was in your group for 2 weeks, 4 months ago, just overdosed. And I just wanted you to know in case you see it in the news or, people have questions and they're looking at your notes. And I was like, Oh, because that was never talked to me or talked
Yeah.
about in our program. I mean, I think one professor maybe mentioned like a client who had passed away, but I feel like none of those things were really given enough attention. And so,
Yeah.
like that, or I had another one that murdered a family member a few months after he got out, and they were like, "So just so you know, like
Yeah.
here we go.
FYI.
Yeah, it's gonna be in the news. You're probably gonna
Yeah.
recognize him. They're gonna look at your notes. There may be some questions." And I mean, in the moment, it was just like, oh my God, no one prepared me for these things. But then looking back later, it was like, well, come at me. Like, what are you gonna throw
Yeah.
at me at any other point, like in your career? Like for in my career, I guess that I'd be like, I've dealt with all of these things early
Mhm.
on and you learn how to. So yeah, I'm sure that you've had similar experiences and stories throughout yours.
Oh yeah. I mean, and you know, I just going through my Rolodex and thinking about all of it. Yeah, and I think that it takes it also kind of increases your confidence in the field to be able to deal with those situations and
Yeah.
to deal with disgruntled clients, especially disgruntled family members, which I deal with a lot because I woke up today to a very disgruntled mother who were working with this client who needs to get out of their apartment. They have a voucher. However, they don't want us to like sit down and go through housing. They're like, just send me a list. I'll do that myself. And I need help with the financial part. But now she's complaining, and I'm sure she's telling her mother anything, certain, you know, what we're not doing. And so then she called and left a message and was just like, what do you guys even do? Like, what is the point of your
Mhm.
services? And I just called and I was like, I understand your frustration. You're mad, you're upset because your daughter's about to be unhoused. But like we talked about previously, your daughter is only asking for this. We've offered this. She's kind of holding the process back on her end. And again, but I understand that this is your daughter, and I'd be concerned if my daughter's about to be unhoused too. And so I will talk to the team and we will see, we'll continue to offer those things. But I think what I have to remind a lot of people is that we're working with adults. I
Yeah.
can't sit here and force XYZ client to follow what I'm saying if they don't buy in. I also wouldn't want that because, again, like you mentioned, we're with them for maybe an hour, two
Mhm.
hours a day. That gives you 22 more hours to do whatever you might do. So I don't need you to sit here and tell me what you think I want to hear. And
Yeah.
then when I leave, do what you want to do because then we're not going to get anywhere. So I definitely I reflected back and say, we're here to help. I think something that you'd mentioned as a low that I've tried to turn into as a high is that you don't see a lot of you know, major gains with the clients that I work with, at least not consistently. And so I was in a CA, like a training, it's called CADC, so drug and alcohol.
Mhm.
And the presenter, Mark Sanderson, had said, like, you know, I think that this saying really helps me when I think about clients and their successes, but like our clients' successes are their own and our clients' failures are their own. And so I feel like as clinicians, we want to save everyone.
Yeah.
And then when they don't do what we've asked or what we think is best and they do the exact opposite, it's like, oh, what was that? Like, why is it me? Am I not doing things wrong? Am I right? Like, I'm going to change my approach. And all those things could be true.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, like our clients, we are only visitors in their life. We are supports in their life. And you know, we what I do with my clients, I lay out all the options like, hey, like you got a 10-day yesterday because you have not cleaned your apartment up. So here are a couple options. You can clean your apartment up and let the landlord know and they can get rid of the 10-day. You can keep it like this and they can continue with the eviction process and you can be evicted. That could take 2 to 3 months. So that could take a long time. So we can wait it out if you choose to, but if we wait it out, eviction on your record, how's that going to impact you? All of these things. Now, if you choose option A, which is what I would choose, great. If you choose option B, I get it. I'll support you, but it might end in you kind of messing up other options. And then
Mhm.
we kind of let the cards fall. Like,
Yeah.
again, adults, we're working with adults.
Yep.
And I think that that has given me the tools to be a more successful clinician in that way because I am supportive. I want to help my clients, but I'm very realistic about what we can and cannot do because we are not, I think that people again, think the community mental health, like, ooh, they do housing. We do housing, but we're not miracle workers. So if you lose housing in Chicago, which I don't know if you or your audience people know, viewers, housing in Chicago is pretty awful.
Mhm.
It's challenging. And
Yes.
so keeping housing is our number one concern. But if clients take the steps to not keep it, then there's not much that we can do.
Yeah, but I think what you said is big for self-care, is being able to separate what the client's doing
Mhm.
from what you're doing, because I think especially when you're newer and you don't have those skills yet, to be able to like compartmentalize certain things, you're figuring out how to separate the work from your personal life. It's really hard to not take those client what is perceived, I guess, as like failures or struggles as something personal. What could I have done different
Mhm.
or better? Or what am I not giving them? And I think a lot of people
Mhm.
internalize that early in their career. So I like how you said, like,
Yeah.
we are visitors. Like, I love that, because then it's just like they visit us for this small period of time.
Yeah.
And we're kind of like, here's a snack. Like, oh, you're staying a bit. You want a clean towel, but eventually they're on their way. Right? Like, there's only so much we can do. But I think that's something really, really important for new therapists, especially to remember, is you're not their whole life. You're not responsible for their whole life. And
Not
if you don't
responsible.
have that separation, you're going to burn out really fast.
Yes, yes, and that is, ooh, yeah. It took me a while to learn that, but yes, I think that is really important, especially just for your own mental health, leaving the day, especially with this work. Like, you're leaving, we work long hours, you're
Mhm.
probably tired, you're in and out of your car, you get home, and I feel like sometimes the first thing I think of is like, oh, that last client I just saw, like, I hope they're okay. I
Yeah.
set them up for success as much as I could with the
Right.
resources, but at the end of the day, they've got to take the reins and kind of move on with that. So it can be tough, but there are some good things, I
Yeah.
feel like. I mean, the major one thing, which you kind of acknowledged it, a lot of this is your way to get your hours so that you can get your license. So if you can kind of tough it out for 2 years, perfect. I think that with my agency, we provide L supervision.
Wow.
Um, so your supervisor or your supervisor should have an L. So you're getting that 1 hour supervision a week. And then we're kind of, collectively going through this. I have to get my L trauma. And so then everyone's kind of like helping everyone and like,
Yeah.
hey, come on, like I did this, took the test and I did this. And here's my resources. And I think as an agency, we've acknowledged that, like, not everyone has access to that. So we
Mhm.
purchase those to kind of provide them to our
Yeah.
staff and try to make sure that we're helping them and getting them time to prepare for that test. Because I think at the end of the day, it will benefit us as
Yeah.
well to have more licensed clinicians on our team. So I think, community mental health, it's the breeding ground for people to get their L's and to kind of get started in the field. Another thing, which I feel like I'm going to have some that come with negatives and positives. It's this shared mission that you have with community mental health, because you're not going into social work. Hopefully, I'm not busting anyone's bubble to make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Typically, you're coming in for a common reason. I think I came into social work, not I think, I came into social work just I started off doing business work, sitting in an office for 8 hours of a day. I
Mm.
did maybe 2 hours of actual work and completed my task for the day. And then I was on Facebook and I was bored out of my mind. And then I decided, like, I could be helping people a lot more with the time that I have. And we all have our family things and that come into play sometimes. So I think that growing up, I always was a helper and helping and trying to resolve problems. I love fixing problems or assist people with problems. So I was like, at that time, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. Do I want to be a teacher? And at the time, social workers and counselors, different. And I went into social work and became a social worker for a nursing home in Hickory, North Carolina.
Ooh, country.
Yeah, yeah, I was out there. And that helped me see, like, oh, this is what I want. This is what I am meant to do. Like, I'm meant to
Yeah.
help people and maybe have difficult conversations with family about their, family member, or try to assist with, like, getting them out in the community and being independent. Like, that was where I felt like I could be the most needed. So I think just generally people come into this field with that kind of drive, that I feel like in community mental health, especially working on these teams of clinicians, we're all kind of driven to help Johnny stay in his apartment, or to help Becky stay on their meds. To help Brandon, who maybe goes to the hospital 5 times a month, maybe let's get him down to 4 times a month. And then that's
Mhm.
a win for everyone.
Yep.
So I think those kind of the drive to help people and to support our clients and understand that we are in a broken system and sometimes they need our support for a long time and sometimes they just need a little bit of help.
Yeah.
I think really helps. And I think it helps through like you said, those, kind of situations when clients unfortunately like pass away. And you're well, why is this happening? When thinking about the negative, but really thinking about the positive, like, they were involved with us, they worked with us, they got what they needed, they were in the community, they were doing what they wanted to do. And unfortunately, things happen, like,
Yeah.
and this wasn't their time. And it can be really hard, but when you reflect on that and also have the support of your peers who are also going through it together and
Mhm.
can lift you up and be like, hey, it seems like you're taking this really hard. How about I take over your stuff and talk to our supervisor and go home for the day? I think it's really
Mhm.
those types of things that's like, oh, like, I love you guys
Mhm.
type
Oh,
of
yeah.
thing.
That's so true though, because as you're talking, I'm like, oh, because I had like Sophia or some people, Amy, that we went to school with, working at the
Of
same
course.
place that I was at. And so being able to have people at like a similar stage of licensure and then some that were above to learn from or share resources, even stuff like I don't know. They had me seeing people like as young as 4 to like in their 60s and 70s. And I'd never worked with kids prior to that. But being like, oh my
Oof.
God, I have a kid coming through. Like, I don't even know what to do with them. And they'd be like, here's some Uno cards. Here's like monkeys in a barrel, like any of the little kids stuff. And so, and then being able to like process that quickly after and, have that support, like trainings on site or things like that,
Mhm.
that really weren't provided much in other places that I've worked in. I felt like community mental health has a lot of resources for people in the community, but I feel like some of them have a lot of resources for the staff too.
Yes, yes. Because again, to your point, we're new clinicians,
Yeah.
master's level, bachelor's level. Honestly, we my agency with the Great Resignation, we have opened up our kind of requirements to take people that have similar degrees or maybe some lived experience because we hire peers
Mhm.
to give people a chance to do this type of work.
Yeah.
You know, I hired someone who was a pizza delivery guy, um, or Uber, or whatever, we'll say pizza delivery guy.
Yeah.
And he's great because he's just able to be present with clients. He can sit with them and listen to them, and that will go a long way.
Mm.
As opposed to someone who's been in school and they're just trying to throw out, therapy modalities to clients and like, what are you talking about? CBT, DBT, what?
Yeah.
Whereas people just want to like sit with them and be like, yo, I just had a really rough day, like, and just talk. And I think that is a big thing is that our clients have not had the opportunity to advocate for themselves, to talk about things, because that's been taken away for one reason or another in these systems, and they just want to talk. And
Yeah.
sometimes there's times when we have that ability and we can sit there and really like, build rapport and be like, that sounds awful. That sounds like, a really tough life. And I'm happy that I'm happy that you're able to share those types of things with us and that we can hopefully better our relationship knowing this. Of course, there's days when we're running around, but I think that, you know, just giving people a chance to do this and to really try those skills out, I think is another plus. Because I think before this, I had never really worked with people that were on meth and seeing them actually on meth, or people that were actively symptomatic with
Yeah.
paranoia. I have someone who thinks that they have tapeworms and is adamant that they have tapeworms and that no one will treat them for the tapeworms. And I'm trying to like segue that into like, well, what happens if they tell you that you don't have tapeworms? They've done every test and they tell you don't have tapeworms, but it could be something around with your mental illness. We have not had a successful conversation yet, but I'm hopeful that we will. And I'm actually
Mhm.
going to call them after this call. It's something that it's a challenge. It's like,
Yeah.
how do I engage this person who is so addicted to cocaine
Mm.
and and we're trying to get them off. Let's provide them services. And we might meet with them and they might be high. And that sometimes happens with our
Yeah.
clients, that you are meeting with people that are high. And then what do you do in those moments that are high and when they're high? Because it's not like you're going to have a deep and honest conversation with them, but maybe let's get them some food. Let's sober up. Let's talk to them about, we had a scheduled appointment today and I called you this morning and you weren't intoxicated, but then I got here and you were. Like,
Yeah.
what's that about? Like, is it something about our meeting? Did you not want to talk
Avoidance.
about the topic that we had? Exactly.
Mhm.
So I think getting down to the nitty gritty in some of those situations, while tough as a new clinician, and sometimes
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, tough for me to enter those situations. I think again, skill building. I think
Yes.
in most of the situations, it's like flexing a muscle that I didn't even know I had until now.
Right. And I think too, what I found initially when leaving community mental health was I started working with the military after, and I was like, all y'all got insurance and jobs and you get a housing stipend every month. Like it was
You
almost
gonna talk to me?
yeah, it was almost boring at first because the pace was so different that I was kind of like, whoa, I need to reset everything. Because I was used to people and kids in foster care, people filing for disability because they couldn't hold a job, like some really serious life stuff. And so obviously people in the military have their own stresses and struggles and all these things that I learned there. But at first it was just like so jarring to switch to that because of the work before, but I also would never take that back. Like you get to learn so much about the world. And especially if you've had a privileged background and you don't fully
Mhm.
understand the ins and outs, it can be more shocking for you to enter that. I know I did not have a privileged background. I grew up in Miami. So I was like, oh, I've seen people schizophrenia on the street. I've seen this, I've seen that. And then my own work experience before I came into school or to grad school. But it's just, I think it really makes you the best clinician possible
Mhm.
when you can work with
Mhm.
that many different types of people. The
Mhm.
other thing I wanted to touch back on that you mentioned was there's this stigma with community mental health of like the pay is really low and whatever, whatever. But there was two things that you said. One was about people getting their hours. What I've seen is I knocked my hours out faster than most people did because I worked at 40 hours a week, where
Oh
people
yes, same.
who maybe did like or went to like private practice or something, you're maybe seeing 15 clients, 20 clients. You're not accumulating those hours as much. Like maybe you have a better work-life balance, but it's going to take you longer to hit that ultimate
Yeah,
goal. I was about, let's get this done. Like, I want this
exactly.
license, I want this freedom. So that was a great place for me. And like you mentioned, and this is the same for me, is supervision was provided. So there's people I knew who paid out of pocket 75,
Yeah,
$100 more every week to be
yeah.
able to do that. So for me, having my supervisor right there on site for the last like year and a half, literally in the office next to me was so nice when stuff was going on or when like my clients were screaming at each other in a family session. And she'd be like, just want to make sure things are okay, AKA you're
We're just
alive.
not.
Yeah. But I feel like that those were some of the financial benefits of working in community mental health. So I want people to pay attention to that piece of it too. If they're thinking like, oh, well, you're not going to make as much money in community mental health. It's like, but if you added up some of those benefits and you're talking about testing materials and all kinds of different things, that
It
actually
adds up. It
does.
adds up. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that I mean I feel like before we graduated, everyone was like, yeah, like you can get L supervision outside of your job and they might charge you like anywhere from like 50 to $100 an hour. And I'm like, how am I gonna pay that? Like
Yeah.
how am I gonna pay that? And then I think that I think for the most part, most community mental health agencies, at least in Chicago, they will offer that supervision for free. So that's one out of the way. The testing material, they will give it to you. I know our agency that when you apply for the test and if you pass, they will reimburse you for paying for the test and for like
Wow.
the application to take the test and then to actually take the test are two different costs here in Illinois, and they'll reimburse you for both. I know they're all money
I
grab.
know all of this stuff.
Um,
It feels like
all of it.
sometimes.
So I think that to your point, I think that can you know, I think that as an agency, I think across the board, and not across the board, and even across all different agencies in Illinois,
Mhm.
we're trying to like level up the playing field in terms of pay, understanding that these entry level positions, I mean, when I started in 2012, I was making 34.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
that wasn't a program that was making a little bit more than the
yeah.
outreach programs, these grant funded programs. So it was tough. I mean, it was tough. I mean, I had a second job. I picked up hours when I could, but I worked 40. And my goal, like you said, was like, I got to get my L.
Yep.
My L will like open up more doors and I'll have more options for things. So I think sometimes it is like, there's this like negative stigma about community mental health, but I think that agencies are trying to wipe that away by like offering, we might not be able to offer you a bunch of money up front. However, we can do it in the benefits and make sure that you can get your license,
Yep.
that you can get, we offered certification in drug and alcohol counseling,
Wow.
where you could get at least half of your hours through our agency through like a 3-hour training every 2 weeks. You said about trainings. We like to send people out to outside trainings. We have inside trainings around different like personality disorders, which I feel like is coming up a lot with a lot of my teams. And so we're going to hopefully be doing a training about that soon. And so it's this. I feel like in social work, in counseling, you have to be a lifelong learner. You have to stay on top of your stuff. And I think that we've done a good job and just agencies across, I feel like the country in terms of let's train our people, let's make sure they have what they
Yeah.
need so that they can be successful. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have the tools to go out and see someone, and it's not even so much like the therapy modalities, but just knowing how to actively listen, motivational interviewing, just those basics will get you really far while working with clients.
Oh yeah, I'd say get you further than some of
Absolutely.
the other stuff, because also what I loved about working in community mental health was like people that are coming to those agencies, they're crafty. They are survivors. Like they've been out there and they've seen some things. So if you come in very young and naive and trying to like throw book stuff at them, probably not gonna go so well, and they're gonna check you real quick. So
Yes.
so be
They're
a
gonna be like,
person.
oh, you're fresh meat. I'm gonna get you.
Yep. So you've got to be a person first. And that's something that I don't think they ever covered in grad school in our program.
There's there's a lot of things I didn't cover in grad school. That can maybe be another time we talk about that.
Yeah, because that's like the basis of this channel is like kind of everything. But I
Yeah.
feel like, yeah, there we could go through it like different categories. Like, oh,
Categories. Then that has a different section, subsection A,
yes.
subsection B. Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
But I think you're right of like drop some of that because I think for some therapists that's their maybe comfort blanket or something being like but the theories, but the notes you have to write that you have to justify it's like you
Oh,
become a pro at that. You'd be playing Uno and be
yeah.
like discuss problem solving skills and assess the
Yeah.
client's ability to handle stress.
Advocated, supported, and
Right.
established a common boundary setting. Yeah, so good.
Right.
Just
So you'll
off the
figure
top.
it out.
Yeah.
So, but I think that you're right. Like you have to be a person first in those situations. And I think that's probably one of the best things as far as like advice goes for new therapists, which is what I wanted to ask next. Like there's specific things that you can think of that would be helpful for new therapists coming into this field.
Okay. I think you need to do a lot of, and this is ongoing, self-reflection. You need to be aware of those things that might trigger you.
Hmm.
If it's clients that have attempted suicide, if it's clients that have been in DV situations, you have to understand that because if you go out and meet a client and you react in front of them, they're going to see it. They see everything.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's not, and that could be an opportunity to discuss it. I mean, that's not the worst thing, but that can give you a chance to have an open and honest conversation with them if you feel comfortable with it. But I think over my years, it's really just seeing clients or not clients, it's staff that were just like, I wasn't prepared for that. I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't know how I feel with that. And well, you got to figure that out because especially in this field, there are clients that come through our doors that want the help. There are clients that are mandated for the help.
Hmm.
We've had a client, I can remember a client who set his bed on fire and his wife was still in the bed. And people are like, I don't want to work with him at all. But I'm like, well, this is our job and he
Yeah.
needs support. And there's something going on as to why he did that. And so we need to figure it out, but acknowledge it, maybe do some skill building around it, maybe be like, that wasn't a good idea. If you were mad at that person, then let's have a conversation. Let's not set the bed on fire. So I think doing that self-reflection, even after the day, after your day, thinking about like, why is it that I feel this feeling at the end of the day? Is it something that happened today? Was it the staff that I worked with? Because you, again, being able to work with other people is something that's going to be really important.
Yeah.
Or is it the clients that I interacted with? Because you know maybe when you get further in your career, you have the ability to kind of pick and choose what clients you have, but
Mhm.
in this early stage, you really don't. You just get clients assigned to you, and that's it. So
Yeah.
I think that is definitely kind of a big one.
Oh, for sure. Because I think sometimes you don't know those triggers till they're in your face. Like maybe
Oof, yeah.
you didn't do some of the work, or you got somebody, you're like, man, this random family member years ago, like used drugs and I just stayed away from them. And then you get confronted with somebody who looks like them, who acts like them, or whatever the situation is. And then you're like, oh, maybe that bothered me more than I thought it did.
Hmm.
So you're right. Those kinds of things are just going to grow as your career goes on. So if you can address them sooner rather than later, you'll be a better
Absolutely.
clinician, better person
Yeah.
for everything.
Yeah. Community mental health, there's a lot of different things that kind of fall under the umbrella of community mental health. So, kind of come in with the idea of learning those different systems, those different aspects of the job, um, but also kind of standing up for yourself. If you don't feel comfortable doing something, then let your supervisor know.
Yep.
Like, don't feel like, oh, because so and so did it, I have to do it. I feel like that. And then afterwards, we find out, I really didn't want to do that. Well, then why didn't you just tell us? Like, why didn't we have a
Mhm.
conversation about it? Even if it's like, I have done the work, I have done my self reflection. I don't feel comfortable working with people that have I said DV earlier, but an IPV situation,
Yeah.
and especially if it's a male versus a female, then I don't feel comfortable. I have experience with that. I would rather not work with that person,
Mhm.
and that is something that maybe needs to involve a little bit more developing and figuring out that. But at the end of the day, we don't want to put clinicians in front of clients that know they're not going to be effective. So I think that is, yes, that is important. Um,
I like that though, because I feel like sometimes new therapists feel like they can't be choosy or they can't show where their weaknesses might be if they perceive it as
yeah,
a weakness, but it's actually a strength to know like which things are going to trigger you and to work around that. So yeah, speak up, be assertive
yeah,
because
yeah. Even whoa, sorry. Even Superman had a weakness. So like, hey, like, know what your weaknesses are, and then kind of just keep that in mind. I know I've said this before, but I think that there is, minus the stigma, I think that doing community mental health does give you a lot of tools to kind of get what you need. And I tell staff, like, get what you need from this job. If you want to do this for the rest of your life, we've got a job for you. If you want to do this and like maybe you figure out like, hey, I really enjoy doing the assessment piece. I really enjoy working with clients that are around substances. Like, I think that's something with my staff when I'm doing, because there's so many different aspects of this job. And when
Mhm.
we get into the professional development, I'm like, what is it about this job that you enjoy? What is it that you don't enjoy? Most people say the progress notes. I get it. I hate progress notes, but you're going to be doing
That's
them.
all the
Sorry about it.
jobs.
Yeah, you're gonna do it. But there's so many different aspects of the job that I think while you're in it, if you can like start to hone in on what you want to do
Mhm.
and be honest with the supervisor if you want to do leadership stuff. That is another area where I feel like in our graduate program and probably in undergrad, really don't talk about it. So
Mm-mm.
we have a lot of clinicians who get their L, then want to be supervisors, and then they're supervising other clinicians, and they're just like, I don't know what to do. How do I deal with this conflict? I don't want to piss this person off by not approving their vacation, but we have no one else working that day. Well, then that person's not going on vacation because you need some staff. And so it's something that we have like a leadership program for people to kind of take like classes and stuff
Oh.
to kind of get them ready for that.
Yeah.
But I know that not everyone wants to do that. I know everyone wants to do
Mhm.
like be a therapist. That's completely fine. But I think for those that want that leadership aspect, they can get that if they kind of just talk to the supervisor. And even people that want therapists, I've had staff that are like, or want to be a therapist. I've had staff that be like, I ultimately want to be a therapist. Can I do that with this job? I'm like, yeah, like you have a team you have clients on your team. Are there any clients that you feel comfortable working with? I would just tell them, like, you're not going to do case management stuff with them. You're just going to do solely therapy, and the
Mm-hmm.
team, everyone else will do. And just so we're kind of keeping the boundaries very
Boundaries.
clear.
Mm-hmm.
So I like any job, there's not, it's not perfect, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that the amount of wealth of information, the skills that you have to kind of impart, um, are really gonna, in this position, in community mental health, and just kind of the organized chaos that you have to work in, that if you can do this job, you can definitely kind of do well in the community, or in community mental health, as well as just in social work in general.
Yeah, and literally anything afterwards.
Anything, anything.
Yeah. And what I found is, even though I wasn't working with some of the people anymore directly who had like schizophrenia diagnoses, or like weren't dealing with substance abuse or whatever else head on, the people I was working with, their family members were. So
Yeah.
it was really helpful for me to have had that background, to be like, well, let me explain a little bit of what may be going on with them, or let's
Mhm.
talk about some of the resources that may be available for them, and let's talk about your boundaries and how you're over functioning for them, or how you can step back, or whatever else it was. So even though I wasn't with specifically those people, those everybody's got those people, some that they work with, that they're related to, that they're responsible for, so those skills still come in handy throughout your career.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the whole, like, having, like, talking to family is
Mm-hmm.
like probably a big part of my job, is really educating families around what we do, what our function is, as well as about like mental illness, and and how to see their family member, and to not just see them for their mental illness, but see
Yeah.
that as an aspect of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And to not, and what I see when I see them as a mental illness, that they turn them into this child that can't do anything, that how dare you leave them at home, and da 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 da. But I'm like, they're an adult, they can do anything. If they wanted to get from the north side to the south side to pick up something, they'll figure it out. However, if we have an appointment at our office at noon, they will completely miss it. Like, there's the wants and there's the needs. Like, you
Mhm.
want to do that, but maybe you need to come to this appointment, and trying to just educate, like, these are adults, and we're here to help, but ultimately we give them the options and really try to support them, and maybe here's some things for you to do, and maybe put up some more boundaries, is what I was telling someone today. Put up some boundaries and say, like, you talk to them about XYZ. We've talked about it. I don't know how much else I can help you. I've done this, like, and that can help in their relationship, because and I tell them, I'm like, you've been with this person for 40 plus years of their life. I've only known this person for 2 years, so I can only
Mhm.
imagine what you've had to kind of encounter. However, like, we're here to help, but this is an adult, and we're going to give them the tools to make the decisions that might be best for them in that moment from their perspective. It
Mhm.
might not be what you would have them do. It might not be what I'd have them do, but we have to, like, treat them as adults, because that's what they are at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I like that you give them that autonomy that maybe other people in their life haven't given them, or haven't let themselves give them, because their own fears and anxieties. You're kind of teaching the family how to have their own boundaries as well, as teaching the
Yeah.
staff, and everybody modeling all the
Yeah.
right things. It's a
Yes.
lot.
All of the things. I also think, Arlie, I was that kid that was like, I don't need someone telling me what to do. Like, I need
Yeah.
to try it myself. And I feel like just to, like, let the client, like, figure it out on their own, because I've had lots of clients be like, I will come to them with options. They will take the option that I did not choose for them, and I'll be like, okay, let's go. And then 2 months later, they'll be like, you know what, I should have taken your option. I'm like, and that's fine, but we're here and
Yeah.
we have other options, and we'll continue the work. So
Yeah. And just being patient too, that their process is going to be different than yours. So,
yeah, that should be the thing I should have said. In this field, you need to be patient. But I
yes,
figure that's in every field,
all of
especially
them.
with this, all
Mhm.
of them. When you're working with people, patience. That's why
Yeah.
all of my friends, family member, partner, they're like, you have so much patience. I'm like, I know, I do.
You're welcome.
Yes, this is to your benefit, because if I didn't, I would have already snapped on you.
Yeah, true. Well, I think the last thing that I'd say, because you mentioned at the very beginning, but maybe one of those other things with support for some of the new therapists or people in this field in general, is to have the support system, to have those friends that after we graduated, first of all, you helped me move into my apartment, which was amazing because I really needed the help. And then to be like, okay, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with our whole lives. Let's just like tune out for a bit and watch Bad Girls Club and hang out and eat food.
Please.
And so having those people who get it, you know, who you can have these open, honest conversations with, I think that's something else too, because it sounds like you and the place you work at do a really good job of trying to help people support each other, which is awesome. So I think that they're really lucky to have you in that director position because you're going to look out.
I appreciate that. Yeah, there's something that I ask in an interview, and it always shocks people. But to your point, I always ask, like, this work is hard, burnout's really real. What do you do to take care of yourself?
Yeah.
Like, really having that conversation so people start thinking about that, because I don't think that I really thought about it. There's days still now that I'm just like, go, go, go. And I have to remember, like, okay, I have to sit down and like process some of this so it doesn't hit me while I'm watching a movie and something happens and then I'm bawling in the corner. So I think like having those supports, having those things that you can go to kind of address like the feelings that you have, and it could be family, it could be friends, it could be playing rugby, it could be watching Bad Girls Club, but just having those things that will help you disconnect from the work. I know a lot of people, it's like really hard to turn off from work. I still think about work probably at least half an hour after I've left, or at least the drive home. But by the time I get home, I'm like, okay, I'm turning off, I'm putting my phone away, I'm putting my laptop away. And that's something that I think, as another thing for clinicians, knowing when to stop working, because especially in this field, there's always things to do. There's always things to research. There's always notes to write. There's always this, but at the end of the day, you have to protect your own peace so that you can do this work. Because if you are burnt out, you're not going to be able to help your clients. So you've got to be like, okay, what's wrong with me? Take a day, take a personal day. I know it's really hard. I'm saying that to myself, looking at myself, say that to myself. Take a personal day and just feel like things will get done if you're not there.
Yeah. And that's another part what you were saying about the team, right? Like being able to work in a setting like that where there is a team to step up. You're not solo, you're not out on your own. So if you do need that day, you've got a whole support system built into the job you're at, which not every job can say.
Yeah. I love working on a team now. That's really, I love the camaraderie. But I do love working by myself too if I can. But anyway.
Yeah, but it's all balance. So,
yeah, it's all about.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you so much, like taking the time, especially with all the stuff you got going on, to do this today and to share.
I think this is great. When you told me about this, I was like, this is such a great idea. So thank you for inviting me to do it. And maybe you might see me again, viewers. I don't know.
I hope so. We got a bunch of ideas. You got a bunch of ideas coming through that we can talk about. So
I've got things to talk about.
Yes. So let's hope so. I want to do a series called Spill the Tea, where I have mini episodes about some of the trashy stuff that happens in this field that people talk about.
Please let me know on that. I've got stories. I feel like I keep thinking like one day I'm going to write a book about all the stories. I'm going to have to change all the names, of course, but like just little short stories, little snippets about things. And yeah,
we'll start calling because you may be a guest on the Tea. Well, for you viewers, I'm going to put Thomas's info underneath so you can see some of the resources he's talking about. And if you want to stay tuned for whatever we do next, whatever I got coming down, then just subscribe below. And I will see you guys next time. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.